The Amish don't have better soil than you. They don't get better weather. They don't use products you can't access. What they have is a sequence, a specific order of planting that turns each crop into preparation for the next one. Fertility builds automatically. Disease pressure drops. Yields climb year after year on the same ground. Modern gardening abandoned this system almost entirely. This video brings it back and shows you exactly how to put it to work in your own beds. You build a new bed. First season, strong yields, healthy plants. Year 2, decent. Year 3, something shifts. Plants stressed earlier. Disease climbs. You add more compost, more fertilizer, more effort, and results keep dropping anyway. Most gardeners assume they're watering wrong or choosing bad varieties. The real problem is more specific. When the same plant family occupies the same ground repeatedly, two processes accelerate simultaneously. First, the specific nutrients that family draws on deplete faster than soil naturally replenishes. Second, and this is what most gardeners miss, pathogens targeting that plant family establish permanent residence underground. They overwinter. They multiply between seasons. By spring, they're already waiting. According to the University of Minnesota Extension, soil-borne fungi like Fusarium can survive in soil for many years as resting spores, even without a host crop present. No fertilizer fixes that. You can feed a plant perfectly from above while the ground beneath actively destroys its root system. The Amish didn't have this research. What they had was 4 generations of observation, watching what happened to fields managed one way versus another. The pattern was unmistakable. Their response became the foundation of everything else they do. If this is already changing how you think, subscribe, more is coming. Most gardeners have heard of crop rotation. Some even practice aversion, shifting tomatoes to a different bed every couple of seasons, alternating beans and corn along the same fence line. That's better than nothing, but it's missing the structure that produces real compounding results. The way most gardening content frames rotation, it's purely a pest interruption tool. Move the crop, break the pest cycle. Partially true, but that's only half the equation. What almost nobody explains is the fertility side, and that's exactly where the Amish system separates from generic advice. Different plant families don't just consume soil differently, they contribute to it differently. Some deposit nitrogen back through a relationship with soil bacteria. Some drive roots deep enough to fracture compacted layers and bring up minerals shallower crops can't reach. Some release root compounds that actively suppress fungal pathogens already living in the surrounding soil. The Amish rotation isn't designed only to interrupt pest cycles. It's designed so each crop prepares the ground for the one that follows. Think of it as a relay race. The fastest team doesn't just have 4 fast runners. They have 4 runners who pass the baton well. The sequence is the strategy. The traditional Amish system organizes crops into 4 broad families, and the order they follow each other is not interchangeable. Heavy feeders go first: corn, tomatoes, squash, cabbage. They draw heavily on nitrogen and trace minerals. They go into ground enriched the previous fall with aged compost or manure. The soil comes out leaner than it went in. Light feeders follow: onions, garlic, herbs, shallow-rooted greens. They perform well in moderately depleted ground and face far less disease pressure. This is a recovery period, lower demand, lower pathogen accumulation. Soil builders come third, and this is where everything turns. Legumes like field peas, beans, clover, and vetch form a working relationship with rhizobium bacteria, pulling nitrogen directly from air and converting it into plant-usable form. Research confirms that legumes with healthy rhizobium bacteria can fix between 80 to 300 pounds of nitrogen per acre, the equivalent of thousands of dollars in synthetic fertilizer. The Amish understood this through observation. Bean fields consistently left ground darker, looser, and more productive. Root crops close the cycle. Turnips, beets, radishes, parsnips drive roots downward, fracturing compacted zones and redistributing deep minerals upward. After the root crop year, ground is ready for heavy feeders again. Same bed, more productive every year. This is the part most gardening content glosses over. The concept sounds clear, but laying it out on your own property is where most people get stuck. Here's the exact process. Step 1, divide your space into 4 areas. They don't need to be equal or perfectly separated. 4 raised beds work. 4 marked sections of a single in-ground plot work. What matters is that each area is distinct enough to track season by season. Sketch it on paper. Label the areas 1 through 4. Keep that sketch somewhere you'll actually use it. Step 2, assign the starting families. Year 1, Area 1 gets heavy feeders. Area 2, light feeders. Area 3, soil builders. Area 4, root crops. Each following year, Every family advances one position clockwise. No area ever sees the same plant family 2 years running. Step 3, amend for what's arriving, not what just left. Most gardeners amend based on what they harvested. The Amish amended based on what they were about to plant. Before heavy feeders, apply aged compost in the fall. Before soil builders, apply nothing. Extra nitrogen suppresses legume fixation. Before root crops, skip fresh manure entirely. It causes forking and misshapen growth in carrots, beets, and parsnips. Step 4, track it in writing. Simple records of what went where reveal patterns no soil test captures. Disease concentration, drainage patterns, your strongest sequences. One critical mistake, rotating within the same family doesn't count. Tomatoes to peppers is not a rotation, and both are Solanaceae with identical pest and disease vulnerability. Families must change, not just positions. The results of structured rotation don't announce themselves in the first season. Year 1 tends to look similar to what came before. Year 2, small signals start to appear, slightly less disease pressure, slightly better water retention after a dry stretch, roots that pull out of the ground cleaner than they used to. Year 3 is where the change becomes difficult to ignore. The Rodale Institute has been running side-by-side comparisons of organic rotation-based systems versus conventional single crop management for more than 4 decades. Their data shows that fields under structured rotation with organic inputs don't just maintain yields, they increase them over time. The conventionally managed plots hit a ceiling and then begin requiring more synthetic input just to hold steady. The Amish experience at the farm level mirrors that pattern directly. Fields that have run the 4-family rotation for 10 or more years develop what experienced growers describe as biological momentum. The soil ecosystem, the bacteria, fungi, earthworms, and microbial life working through every cubic inch of productive ground becomes so well balanced and well fed that it resists drought stress faster, recovers from pest pressure more completely, and delivers reliable harvests with progressively less external help each passing season. The soil stops being something you manage, it starts being something that works with you, and the same dynamic operates at home garden scale. Soil biology doesn't scale down with your plot size. 4 raised beds running a proper rotation for 3 years will show the same kind of shift you'd see on a working farm. The microbes don't care how many square feet you're managing. They respond to sequence and consistency. Here's the piece that most gardening content leaves out entirely, and it's the one that takes rotation from a solid system to a complete one. The Amish don't just sequence crops across beds in rotation. They layer companion plants within each rotation block to do additional work during the growing season itself. The most recognized example is the Three Sisters planting, corn, beans, and squash grown together in the same space. The Amish adopted and adapted this model across their full rotation calendar. The beans climb the corn and fix nitrogen directly at its root zone. The squash leaves spread across the ground, blocking sunlight from weeds and holding soil moisture through dry periods. 3 crops occupying one space, performing 3 separate functions at the same time. Within the light feeder block, aromatic herbs, dill, borage, and basil are commonly interplanted alongside onions and garlic. The volatile compounds released by those herbs interfere with how pest insects locate their target crops. It doesn't work through toxicity, it works through interference. The pest's chemical navigation gets disrupted by the surrounding botanical noise and it moves on without finding the crop it came for. Within the root crop block, a specific variety of radish, sometimes called a tillage radish or daikon type, is planted not for harvest but for soil work. It drives a thick taproot 2 feet or more into the subsoil, fracturing compacted layers that no hand tool reaches. When it winter kills, the decomposing root leaves behind a channel that improves water infiltration and aeration before spring planting begins. None of this costs anything significant. None of it requires a product from a store. It's all about understanding what each plant does for the ground around it and placing it where that function is most needed. That's the thinking that runs through every layer of the Amish system. The crop rotation handles the long cycle. The companion planting handles the short one. Together, they produce ground that genuinely improves with time. The biology is compelling. The financial argument is just as direct. The average home gardener spending on fertilizers, soil amendments, and pest control products invests between $150 and $400 per growing season. That number repeats every year. It doesn't build anything. It covers the gap left by a soil that isn't generating its own fertility. A 4-family rotation system, once running, requires compost, which most households can produce at near zero cost from kitchen scraps and yard trimmings. It requires cover crop seed for the soil builder year, typically $15 to $30 for a home garden plot. And it requires a notebook and the discipline to use it. By year 3, most gardeners running this system report cutting their amendment spending by 50 to 70%. Not because they're cutting corners, because the soil has started producing what they were previously purchasing. The Amish understood this as a matter of farm survival, not gardening philosophy. A system that requires constant purchased inputs carries permanent financial exposure. Input prices rise, supply chains break. A farm built on bought fertility is always one bad season away from a serious problem. A farm or a garden that generates its own fertility is structurally different. It gets more stable over time, not less. Before you rearrange your beds and start the first rotation cycle, 4 mistakes are worth knowing because each one is common and each one quietly kills your results. Skipping the soil builder year, legumes aren't visually impressive. Some gardeners swap that year for a second round of light feeders to squeeze more production out of the bed. Within 2 or 3 cycles, the soil makes that trade visible. Yields drop, compaction increases, and disease pressure starts climbing again. The soil builder year is not a rest year. It's the year the system recharges, using fresh manure before root crops. Uncomposted manure causes carrots, beets, and parsnips to fork, split, and produce misshapen growth. It can also carry pathogens. Any manure going into a bed scheduled for root crops should be fully aged. Minimum 6 months, ideally applied 2 full seasons before the root crop year arrives. Starting the rotation mid-cycle. Most gardeners jump in wherever feels convenient, dropping soil builders into a bed that just ran heavy feeders 2 years straight. The sequence only compounds when it starts correctly. Begin with a full reset, amend properly, assign all 4 areas, and run the cycle from position 1, treating rotation as a single-purpose tool. Rotation helps with pest management, but it also cycles fertility and builds soil biology. Tracking only pest pressure while ignoring the fertility side means missing the compounding benefit entirely. That compounding is where the long-term value actually lives. Everything covered in this video connects back to one principle. Soil isn't a container you fill and empty. It's a system you either build or deplete, season by season, decision by decision. The Amish 4-family rotation works because it was designed around that reality from the beginning. Heavy feeders draw down fertility, light feeders stabilize it, soil builders restore it, root crops restructure it. Each family hands the ground to the next one in better condition than it received it. That's not a complicated idea, it's a disciplined one. 3 things to carry out of this video. Soil fatigue is real, measurable, and reversible, but only when you change the sequence, not just the inputs. The soil builder year is the most commonly skipped step and the one that determines whether your rotation compounds or just shuffles problems from bed to bed. And companion planting isn't a separate practice. It's the layer that makes the rotation work harder within each season. If this changed how you're thinking about your garden, subscribe. Every video on this channel pulls practical methods out of old farming systems and puts them to work for home growers. Leave a comment below and tell me, have you tried crop rotation before? What results did you get? I want to know what happened in your soil. Coming up next, how the Amish manage pest pressure through an entire growing season without a single chemical spray, and the specific plant combinations they use to keep crops clean from spring all the way through harvest. That one is worth staying for. The old methods aren't outdated, they're just underused.